Hey, what's up you guys? In this video we're gonna work on the submarine door in 3ds Max and Substance Painter, so please give this video a like and share it around if you will. Alright, so here we are and we're gonna start working on this submarine door, simply starting from a box, and probably we're gonna build our way until we actually figure out what is gonna be the next what are gonna be the next details we're gonna add. So probably this door is gonna be something similar to something that you are gonna see in houses or any type of building, because after all, a human is gonna walk through it. So probably we're gonna try to chamfer the sides like this, select the sides, and use the chamfer tool in order to make it smooth on the sides, because the corners absolutely are not sharp. So here we're gonna inset in order to actually create an opening right there. Probably, as you can see, selecting both sides and bridging is gonna be a good strategy. And there is obviously a technique I'm gonna use here, which is we're going to actually extrude and then extrude vertically and extrude horizontally next, as you can see. So this is going to allow us to expand and create more details as we go, because it's like there is an escalator effect going on here. We are kind of building steps, going horizontal then vertical, kind of one by one. And as you can see here, we're gonna do it once again. So in order to switch from edge selection to polygon selection, I'm holding control. So select the polygons, then keep holding control, select the edge, keep holding control, then select the polygon in order to see a switch between edge selection and polygon selection. Here we are, and here let's just probably extrude once more, so the value here is going to be a little bit larger. And of course, this is all subject to change later if you want to change that, because sometimes you're gonna see some problems with proportion, and probably you don't like the distances or the size of certain elements of your modeling, and you can change that later. Sometimes it's gonna be a little bit difficult, but if you are smart, you're gonna manage, you're gonna know your way around it, and you're gonna manage to change that if you are smart, as I said, because there are some good tools in 3ds Max that are gonna allow you to do this. And here I'm trying actually to remove some of these edges because they are not necessarily needed right there. And as you can see, we're gonna extrude once more when it comes to this outer edge, and it's kind of actually, to be honest, this is not the door itself, this is the frame of the door, this is the outer edge of the door, this is the where the door is supposed to be. So this is the opening in the wall that the door is going to be created inside. Later we're gonna start creating that door, but for now I think this is an extremely important piece, because after all, it has a lot of details to it, and we're gonna add a lot of pieces in order to look like what it's supposed to be. So for example, we're gonna add some support pieces. I don't know exactly what these are going to do in real life, but they seem to hold everything in place. Probably they hold the frame in its place or something like that. I don't know, but I think it's a great addition. And as you can see, I'm using the extrude tool in order to actually to make it look similar from the upper side and the lower side. So also we'll try to actually make it leaning against the surfaces of this frame in a nice way, because I think this is an important thing, because you don't want to see differences or kind of empty spaces in between these surfaces. Okay, right now we'll try to extrude these polygons here, because I think it's a nice addition to it, and I believe we could have added few pieces on top of that, but I decided, or it seems from references, that it's enough, and actually probably this model here has so many. It's incredible the amount of floating geometry added here, from bolts to screws to, it's crazy, probably hundreds of these all over the place. And it's not that big of a deal because obviously I can't add that to the low poly, so I decided these are gonna be actually floating geometry. And if you know what I mean, you will understand what I'm talking about real quick. So obviously these are not gonna be floating geometry because they are big enough to make their place into, or make their way into, the low poly version. So we are trying here to copy it over to the sides because these pieces are gonna be all over the place. And make sure that you are gonna copy them as instances, because otherwise you're gonna do a lot of work, or you're gonna do it all over again. Make sure you're working with instances, because you want to see the things you are doing repeating themselves in the other pieces, and you don't want to redo everything for each individual piece. So there are some smart ways to go about it that are gonna save you some time, especially if the task is gonna be impossible, such as this, where you're gonna have probably tens or hundreds of pieces that are gonna be similar. All right, we're trying here to position these pieces in a nice way, and we're gonna figure out, of course, how this is gonna look. And here I'm trying to actually create the door using some polygons. I just copied, keep holding shift to copy any type of polygons or anything like that. But after all, I think it's not gonna work, because there is some work necessary. Then I decided to copy this polygon instead, these sets of polygons instead, because they are gonna be directly correlated, or directly positioned where the door is gonna be. And this is actually an excellent way to save some time and get more accurate. So when we actually we can actually give that polygon some thickness using the shell modifier or the extrude modifier or whatever. And we'll try here to connect all the pieces or the vertices, and in order to actually get rid of the n-gons and try to keep only triangles or quads. This is gonna make it easier for us. And from here we can start adding the details on the door itself. And in this tutorial, of course, there are gonna be a lot of floating geometry going around, because actually when it comes to creating low poly for games, the high poly sometimes does have to have a lot of details, and I think it's not smart to add everything attached to the main pieces, like some of the details, like I don't know, maybe some extruded areas, or some small pieces, some details in the corners or inside the surfaces. I think adding floating geometry is gonna take off some of that work that may kind of hinder you and consume a lot of your time and energy. So floating geometry are extremely important if you want to get something nice, quick, and easy. So but you're gonna have to be good at baking. That's why I'm here to show you how to do this stuff. All right, so the this piece we are creating here is gonna be I think this is a support piece in order to solidify or kind of keep the door in place. Just probably if there is problems with pressure or something like that, because I cannot imagine what's going on under like kilometers underwater. The pressure is tremendous. It can crash steel. And probably this is gonna keep everything in place if there is gonna be a breach in certain areas in the submarine or something. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a submarine expert, but it seems like they have to take some things into considerations. That's why you see these crazy, complicated pieces with tons of different, actually crazy support pieces and metal and all over the place. It seems like it is unnecessary, but I don't believe that someone is gonna take take the time and energy and money to create something that is not unnecessary, because some of these things actually seem to appear over time, and the necessity actually develop from facing problems, and it's not something that they do for fun. All right, so here we are trying to add some pieces here. This is going to be the base that the valve that we're going to use to open this door is going to be standing on. And I was not trying to be super accurate here, just because these tutorials are actually for just to show you how to do stuff, and some of them are actually the ones that I go complex and try to get super accurate. Probably these were not created as tutorials in the first place. I was just showing you what I was doing. But there are for things that I create for explanation and for demonstration purposes. I'm not gonna try to go deep and try to complicate things, because for the most part, people who watch these tutorials are not experts, and there are a lot of people who know a lot about what I'm doing, which is great, because if you see me doing something that you don't like, or you think I can do better, please let me know in the comment section. I'm open to actually commenting comments and criticism even, or feedback, whatever you want to say. Please leave a comment down below, because this really helps, and probably you are going to help a lot of people as well. And I don't claim that I know. I do know everything, cause we all started from scratch, and there is always something new to learn, and there is always some concepts or some other methods that I don't know about. So yeah, and my channel is actually the comments are not that frequent. There are a lot of people who watch my videos, but it seems like no one is excited about leaving a comment somehow. I literally reply to all comments. So if you are new here, or if you want to say something, or just if you want to say hi or thank you or whatever, you are very welcomed here, and I will be very glad if you do that, because this really helps. So here we are trying to create the valve that we're going to use to open the door, and this torus is actually going to be an interesting piece here, because it's going to be attached to the other pieces. So here probably we're not going to be attaching all the pieces together, because sometimes I don't go through the hassle of trying to actually attach all the pieces together, because it's gonna be a little bit of work, and sometimes it's not gonna be necessary in the first place, and probably it's not gonna have that much of a difference or an impact on the final result. So saving some time and energy is the one of my favorite things that I do lately, because I have so much work to do, and yeah, I hope you appreciate the effort. Thank you very much. Here we are trying, actually I'm trying to figure out how these little metallic pieces, they're gonna be actually handles attached to this wheel in order to help rotate this thing. So I'm trying here to actually create circles, and in order to actually create these handles, because they are gonna be cylinders attached to this wheel. So creating these circles is gonna be important in order to do this. Okay, as we extrude these these pieces here, using of course keep holding shift to do this, you can see that the end is not actually something I like. So probably we're gonna manually going to add a cylinder and try to attach it and create a bridge between the cylinder and the this torus or this wheel we created. And I think this is gonna be a little bit more accurate, and it's gonna give us a little bit more control over the process. Alright, as you can see, you're gonna use the bridge tool in order to do this, and of course in order to save some time, you're gonna delete everything and rotate it around in order to do this. And it's gonna be a smart way of doing things instead of trying to repeat things over and over again. Okay, after copying everything, we're gonna try to actually, of course, you're gonna weld everything using the weld tool. And for now, we're gonna start adding some floating geometry. So these are gonna be on top of the surface of the door. So as you can see, we're trying to make it look like triangles here, and we are gonna apply some nice tricks in order to do this. Just make sure that the the faces that are actually going to because there are two for any surface, there are two faces. There are the normals, or the surfaces that are going to be visible, or the flipped normals. So you're going to make sure that the surfaces that are going to be visible are going to be facing you. And if you don't do that, then the result is not going to be pleasant, and you're not gonna see the result going on or happening in the baking process. So you're gonna make sure you do that. Or if you think, or if you face any problems later in baking, probably you need to flip the normals if you can, if you actually find yourself in such situation. All right, so here we're doing the same thing, and try to position it nicely somewhere close, and make sure the floating geometry is exactly on top of the surface that you want, and make sure that it is not actually covered or actually touching certain areas that are not necessarily concerned with this process. And here, as you can see, we're trying to copy these bolts and screws around because they are literally all over the place, and from both sides. So it's no surprise that there are going to be hundreds of these. I if they weren't so many, probably I could have just included them in the low poly version because they are literally standing out few, probably 1 to 2 centimeters. That so as I said, if they were just few, I could have kept them, but since they are hundreds and it's too much to actually include in the low poly, so I had to make them part of the floating geometry. And of course, they're not gonna look as good as if they were actually part of the low poly, but at the end of the day, there are some limits and some restrictions that we need to actually accept. All right, as you can see here, we're trying to copy these floating geometry all over the place, and make sure that you actually maintain symmetry because this is gonna be a really important thing. And you don't want to you don't want actually to place, or you don't want to actually spend extra time trying to do everything manually, because you can work on all of these once, and you're gonna copy everything to the other side. It's like, or you can use a symmetry modifier in order to do this. It's gonna work, or you're gonna use a mirror actually in order to do this, because using the symmetry modifier implies that you're gonna convert things into edible poly, and then you're gonna lose the effect of copying as instances. All right, so this is an exception here. Probably here you're gonna do it manually because the difference between these pieces is not gonna be perfect. So this is probably gonna be an exception. Alright, for now, after we finish with the floating geometry, it's time to create layers for the high poly and for the low poly. And in order to do this, we're going to use the layer explorer, as you can see, and we're going to create another copy for the low poly. So the difference is the high poly version right now. We're gonna try to add support edges to it and add the smoothing modifiers and stuff. But for the low poly later, we're going to decrease the amount of polygons. We're gonna remove all the polygons that are not gonna be necessary and stuff. So here, the high poly, we are adding support edges. This is very important because we want it to look highly detailed and smooth. In order to do this, we're going to make sure that we're going to support the edges that need to look hard edge. And to do this, we can use the Swift Loop, which is a great tool, or you can use some traditional tools like you can apply ring, connect, and do whatever you want in between. So these are my main methods I use in order to do this. I sometimes use different methods like using some chamfer modifiers, which work great, I would say, and they can save you some time, but I prefer to use something as simple as supporting geometry, support edges like these, for a lot of different reasons. But sometimes I use some other methods that are probably that can be probably good for different reasons or for different situations. Alright, for the same pieces, it's gonna be the same, so it's gonna be highly repetitive, and sometimes you're gonna have to be creative a little bit in order to try to find smart solutions to do whatever you need to do. The most important thing is that the result you're gonna get is gonna look interesting and nice and clean and everything else. When it comes to these pieces that are related to floating geometry, you probably want to connect all the pieces together. The most important thing is that the result is going to look nice and smooth and clean. And anything in between, you're going to have to figure out yourself sometimes, because I don't actually want to spend a lot of time actually trying to do some things that are very obvious or highly repetitive. Okay, right now, as you can see, we'll try to make sure that everything here is actually working properly. And of course, the low poly version, creating the low poly version is gonna be a little bit different here for especially for that frame because it seems like when we smooth out the frame, the amount of details is gonna be a little bit different, which leads to a difference between the high poly and the low poly, and the bacon is not gonna be the same. So we're gonna have to increase a little bit the quality of the low poly frame in order to match a little bit, adapt to how the high poly is actually looking. So right now what we're doing is we're gonna remove all the unnecessary pieces, which are the floating geometry on the low poly version. So we're gonna select them all and get rid of them. That's why they are floating geometry, because we don't really need them. Alright, so we're gonna deselect all the areas that we are gonna keep, and we're gonna remove these bolts and screws because they're gonna be floating geometry. As I said, they are absolutely not necessary. So I drag them outside in order to make sure that we're selecting the right ones. And these plates here are going to be, or these surfaces are going to be the same. They're going to be deleted. Anyways, this frame here is an exception. So we actually borrowed from the high poly with Super Smooth on. I just converted it to edible poly, and and what we are going to do right now is we're going to delete all the edges that are going to be absolutely not necessary. So for example, these ones in the center, and also a few these support edges in between, we're going to try to keep only one that is going to represent the building block or the corner that is going to keep everything in place. Anything in between is going to be deleted. Okay, so we're going to select everything and loop Alt L from the keyboard, or just loop, and you will see it being deleted. So there are so many of these. It's going to take some time to get to all of them, but at the end of the day, I think this is a little bit more accurate when it comes to baking later in Substance Painter, because if we actually rely on the basic low poly version of this frame, I think the bake can't be actually good. Okay, as you can see here, this is a better version of what we are trying to get. When it comes to this, it looks like a doorknob or something, but it actually isn't. So we're gonna try to remove the most out of this, because some of these sides and some of these polygons are not going to be seen in the first place. This is a smart way of dealing with it, I think, because we want to get something beautiful with the minimum amount of polygons. Here on the front as well, we're going to remove a lot of these because they're not going to be necessary. So when it comes to creating the low poly version, it seems like we have a good amount of work to do here on this model, simply because we want to keep things at the minimum. Alright, when it comes to this door, the basic or the main piece in this submarine door, it's gonna be very simple. We're gonna try to attach all the vertices to one vertex in the center. Okay, now we're gonna start working on the UV unwrapping for this submarine door, and for the most part this is not gonna be something difficult. We're gonna use the box modeling tool right there in order to simplify things, and we're gonna extract the pieces that seem like they are already unwrapped correctly. Then we're gonna start to rearrange and stitch the pieces that seem to be scattered all over the place. The shortcut is Shift S in order to stitch all the pieces. Alright, most of the work we're gonna do here is about organizing stuff and putting everything in their right place, and it's trying to stitch everything together. And as you can see here, I'm trying to apply uh, the uh, the the checker texture, and in order to check if there are any stretches or any distortions with the mesh. This is the main objective behind using it. And as you can see here, this door is gonna be unwrapping. It is not gonna be something that hard, just simple pieces. And we're gonna see now how this is gonna look using the checker texture. And also the checker texture is very good at telling us the size of the UV elements compared to the other pieces. So this is an important role also. For this piece here, it's gonna be something similar, just to try to do the same things, and obviously is going to be smaller. And in order to actually unwrap all the other pieces, since they are instances, automatically through YesMax is gonna do the same thing to them and is gonna apply the UV unwrapping modifier. So applying the checker texture right away should actually allow us to see if these pieces are going to be unwrapped or not, and they are actually unwrapped. So for these boxes here, it's going to be the same, very similar, very simple. For this knob locking object here, also we're gonna use the box modeling, and we're gonna try to stitch all the pieces together, because since it is formed or created most of, it's something cylindrical, then we expect to do a lot of stitching here, and after that we're gonna have only to organize all these pieces together, and we should get something nice and clean. Alright, when it comes to unwrapping this wheel here, um, it's gonna be a little bit interesting because we're gonna have to be smart about it, since we're gonna have to divide these separate pieces in a smart way. So the wheel itself, we're gonna cut it into two halves, because this is, I think, the best way to do it. And we're gonna exclude these tubes or these cylinders from the equation, because it's gonna be a simpler. Alright, it seems like we're done with the process of UV unwrapping after actually working on all the pieces. We're gonna start now attaching everything together. So as you can see here, we'll try to bring all the pieces that we unwrapped into one place that we call the UV template. Also, before we do anything, before we start putting everything together, there is one thing which is very important, which is the overlapping UVs. I personally don't like overlapping UVs, so I try to separate them, which is for obvious reasons, because the textures are gonna be similar, and they're not gonna look realistic. So they're gonna look like cheap duplicates, which is far from being realistic. Alright, right now, as you can see, we're trying to put everything inside the UV template, and feel free to organize them in any way you want, because at the end of the day you want them to be in one place, and make sure only just to not to leave a lot of empty spaces, and you want to make it look exciting and beautiful at the end of the day. So here we're trying to right now we'll see we'll actually check if there are any problems or anything we forgot, or any pieces that we added or we forgot to add before we export the files to Substance Painter. Alright, there is only one other important thing we need to do, which is renaming the pieces. This is very important for baking, and there are a lot of floating geometry, so they're gonna have the same name as the pieces that are gonna be on top of. So and on the other side there is one piece or two on the low poly. It depends on what you're doing actually. So this is not accurate, and it differs according to the situation you're dealing with. So right now, after we finish naming everything, we're gonna start baking. So import the low poly version and import the high poly version. Change the suffixes according to what you named them inside 3ds Max, and change some of the parameters when it comes to the maps we're gonna bake, and you are gonna be ready to go. So that was a test bake, and right now we're gonna do the real thing. So we're gonna change some parameters, and also we're gonna make sure that our parameters and our settings are gonna be solid. And we're gonna add anti-aliasing, and as you can see, this is the result we get. So it is pretty close to the high poly version we worked on. It's similar and it looks nice to a certain extent. For now, we're gonna start adding some textures. So the first thing we're gonna add is gonna be this gun painted material, smart material, which is something I like, and because of the details it has and a lot of things, and we're not gonna keep it as it is, because obviously I like to add damage and details and rust and a lot of things. So in order to do this, we're gonna work with the rust material. So this material is gonna be a theme, and it's gonna be really important in this tutorial. So we're gonna add it right there, and we're gonna add a black mask. Then we're gonna add a smart mask in order to replace that black mask. And as you can see, this is what we get. This is what this smart mask is gonna allow us to do. And of course, you're gonna change some parameters like global balance, which allows to increase or decrease the amount of place or the amount of space that this mask is eating. And also you can change a lot of parameters that I cannot talk about right now because I want this to be simple and quick. So I'm trying here to add another layer, which is right now going to be actually which is gonna be affecting a different place. Alright, so as you can see here, we're gonna add another rust material in order to actually hit this door from different places, because obviously one mask or one generator is not gonna allow us to do everything, even for one material. So it seems like we have to do actually, or to apply different masking generators in order to get the result that we want. Alright, right now I will try to add another variation in color here, or some effects of kind of damage to the surface of the submarine door, because obviously we want to see that. And in order to do this, it's gonna vary a little bit in color in comparison with to the real deal here, which is actually the that smart material we started with. And I'm gonna change probably the height a little bit on that one, which is gonna actually give us some depth, and it's gonna look nice after we do this. So the color of that variation, we don't want it to be really standing out, and it's gonna look actually good at the end. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please give us a like and subscribe if you're new. And please help me share these tutorials, because they are hard to make and they take a lot of time. And thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.